From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. This week, Jim is on vacation, but don't worry, we have a Jim robot filling in, and I guarantee you will not notice the difference.
Robot noises.
And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
So I demand that you call me Robo Jim for the rest of the episode.
Done. Deal.
So hello, listeners. This is may or may not be real Jim. Maybe an Android simulation of the actual Jim. But yeah, so the real Jim, when you are hearing this, is on the beach in California. But Jim from the past is here to take good care of you. So luckily, we still get to record this episode. So we refer to this as a bank episode, which is funny, Nick, because we have no real reason to even be honest to the listener. We could totally just play this off like this is all happening the actual day that they're listening to it. They would never know.
Yeah, why not?
You know what? All right.
We've lied about other stuff.
We've been lying this whole time. They think that we're therapists. There's so much. This whole thing is built on a lie. Yeah. So, just disregard everything I just said. This is totally being taped, you know what, minutes before you downloaded this pod. Yep. Jim is safely sitting in his office right now, looking out the window, staring at a bird. So,
well, I hope you have a nice vacation.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I get to bring my kids and make sandcastles and get a sunburn and all the other tourist crap. So,
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. So it will be fun, and I will not miss you. And
likewise,
I will not miss the double workload I'm leaving
we
behind.
Could use a break from each other.
That's true. It's time.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, I didn't know you felt like that, though. Okay. Oh, shit. Awkward. Well, all right. Well, speaking of dealing with unpleasant emotions.
Yes.
There's new research.
There is.
About how people deal with unpleasant emotions. So let's dive into it. A new study indicates that emotional eating in childhood is learned at home. This is fascinating stuff. Emotional eating is learned in your childhood at home. So the study was published in the Pediatrics Obesity Journal, and it found that genetics only play a small role in young children's emotional overeating or undereating, unlike other eating behaviors in childhood, such as food fussiness. So basically, when we see obesity in childhood, or we see underweight children, or underweight in adolescents, for a while there was this theory that genetics were probably the best reason for this, that if we studied the genetic lineage, we discover some people are sort of predisposed, to obesity or predisposed to one way or the other. But actually, with this current research, which analyzed data from almost 400 British twins, it builds on a previous study in 2017, which highlighted the strong effect of the home environment on the emotional eating. So in this study, half the families were selected specifically because the parents were obese or had obesity, to see if the effect of the home environment or emotional eating was still strong. So the researchers found that emotional eating is driven by environmental factors, regardless of the child's genetic risk for obesity. So here's a quote from the paper. Experiencing stress and negative emotions can have a different effect on appetite for different people. Some crave their favorite snack, whereas others lose their desire to eat. Experiencing stress and negative emotions can have a different effect on appetite for different people. Some crave their favorite snack, whereas others lose their desire to eat altogether when feeling stressed or sad. The study supports previous findings, suggesting that children's emotional over- and undereating are mostly influenced by environmental factors and completely shared by twin pairs, and that genes are largely unimportant for emotional overeating and childhood.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
so this kind of goes into the nature versus nurture debate that we hear
exactly
so
what
much
it is.
About in psychology. Are you the way you are because of genetics, or are you the way you are based off of the environment that you grew up in? So we have this conversation a lot when it comes to addiction as well. Did I learn this because my parents were addicts, or is there a biological component? Which in addiction, we actually found the opposite. which is that there is a genetic component.
There is. And a family history component too. And that's also what makes it really difficult to understand fully, is that I'd say that we would say addiction's a whole person disease, right? Like it has every piece of it. We consider it a biological, psychological, sociological illness. So it has factors and pieces of the puzzle that come from all of that. But what's interesting in this obesity study is that they're saying, hey, for a while we were chasing the rabbit of genetics, but what we're really concluding now decisively, this is the second study to line up this way, is that people have emotional eating patterns which they learn in childhood. So that's fascinating because I know a lot of adults that have failed at different kinds of diets and different kinds of like regulation, and they get really discouraged with it. And they'll sort of note that they're aware that they tend to emotionally eat, right? When they're stressed, when they're depressed, when they're anxious, they sort of self-medicate with food, which is not unlike an addiction that we've seen.
So do you think that this part of this has to do with the way a parent raises a child or how they deal with something? You know, my parents did this to me as well. I'm sure a lot of parents do, is like when your kid has a rough day or, you know, has to go to the dentist and, you know, has some teeth pulled or had to go to the doctor and get some shots. Well, let's go to McDonald's. Let's get some ice cream. I'll get you an ice cream cone.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's part of it, where you're kind of teaching this, I'm emotionally under distress. Food helps.
This is how I self-soothe.
And you just kind of learn that behavior.
I think so, Nick, because like obviously I have 2 kids and, you know, I'm a recovering child myself. And
barely.
But, you know,
recovery is a bit of a stretch.
I'll tell you this, as a parent, it's very true that like there's seldom a time that eating is not in some way associated with emotion with my kids. Whether that's me yelling at them and telling them they need to eat, and so I'm inflicting emotion into this environment, or whether it's me comforting them by offering them a candy or an ice cream or their favorite snack or macaroni and cheese, which when you have a toddler, macaroni and cheese is like a food group. There's like fruits, vegetables, macaroni and cheese. Like that's a thing. That is like one meal a day. So it's interesting because I think that my own food patterns that I've noticed in my life are very much influenced by how I was raised. Like my wife was raised where it was a strongly Cuban family. And so their tradition is everything is made. Like you just don't ever go out. And the economic status that they had meant that it wasn't possible to go out and eat. Like that was a very seldom treat. To go out to like Del Taco and get a family meal was a big deal because they were like a big family. So you make things that go around like rice and pork and things like that. In my family, there's only 2 kids. We have a huge age difference between us. So I was pretty much a single child for a lot of my childhood. And our economic status was such that it was easy to just take me out, you know, and just like, oh, let's go to a steakhouse. Let's go to a restaurant. Let's go to McDonald's. And this was back before it was like not normal to go to McDonald's. Like now it's like, oh, don't take your kids to McDonald's. That's considered lazy. When we were kids, we had birthday parties at McDonald's. Like the Happy Meal effect was in full force. The marketing strategy was killing it, you know? So that was like, if you're a good parent, you take your kid to McDonald's and show them a good time, you know, that's where they're going to get a great day. And it's, you know, so like that was very ingrained in me. And I picked up a lot of unhealthy eating habits. To this day, if I'm having a bad day, I'm picking up fast food on the way home, period. That's just going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way too. And I'm able to identify what emotions specifically it is. It's usually not sadness, depression, or anything like that. My 2 biggest ones are stress and happiness.
Interesting. If you feel very happy, you want to celebrate with some food.
Yeah. You know, and I kind of talk myself into, you know what, today's a cheat day. Let's go eat something outside.
And if you're having a bad day, you're like, you know what?
Well, if it's based off of stress, then it's like, I just need to unwind. I just need to relax. And
what's interesting to me is, and this is something that I've worked with people who have overeating disorders. I haven't worked with people on the other side of the line so much that have, you know, like a binge purge or anorexia nervosa. We have colleagues that specialize in that. But when I work with people that have emotional eating patterns where they overeat, what's interesting is, and I can identify this for myself too, because I identify as an overeater. What's interesting is I was thinking about this morning. I cannot remember the last time I ate because I was hungry.
Right.
Now stay with me on that. That's like an odd statement because like if there's a hashtag first world problem, that's it. Like first world problem, I don't eat when I'm hungry. I don't remember the last time I was hungry.
Well, if you think about it, we're one of the few countries that go hunting on a full stomach.
Right. Yeah. Like I eat because it's time.
Yeah.
I eat because, well, we're in the middle of our workday and we've got some downtime. Let's go ahead and grab a bite. Or, you know what I mean? Like I eat on the way home, like, oh, because I'm going to pass that place and they're running a deal or whatever. Or it's in my mind. Like I saw a commercial, but like I eat not because the thing I feel is hunger, but because the thing I feel is boredom, or the thing I feel is tired, or the thing I feel is entitlement or stress or happy or whatever. And it's fascinating to me because I do not eat for physiological hunger very much.
Yeah, that describes me at a movie theater.
Okay.
I cannot watch a movie without eating something.
Oh, okay. You have to have a snack.
Yeah, I just the concept of going to a movie and just sitting there.
Yeah.
With nothing to do with my hands.
Right. Right.
Like, and not putting things in my mouth. It's like, I can't
That's
do
the
that.
ritual thing about it. But it's so interesting because, like, I have a little boy, he's about 8, and he's on summer break right now from school. And recently I've been noticing that, you know, we let him go to bed a little bit later. And when we're taking him out to bed, he's always hungry right then, you know, like, hey buddy, it's time to go take a shower. Or it's time to go brush your teeth. We're going to go to bed. He's like, oh, I'm hungry. And my wife has this complex where she cannot put a child to bed if they say they're hungry, because then she feels like a failure as a parent. So like, well, I'll feed him. And I'm like, no, knock off this crap. Like, stand up to this kid. He's not hungry. He ate dinner. And she's like, I know, but you know, he feels hunger. And so like, I'm talking to him and I'm like, dude, do you really feel hunger? And he's like, I don't know if my tummy's empty, or I don't know. I want to eat. And it started teaching me that even at that young age, you're soothing. You're soothing the emotion, or it's part of your ritual. I want to go to bed with a full stomach. Like, I want to zonk out or something to that effect. And it's interesting because, like, another thing that we had to talk to him about was, it's okay to feel hungry. You don't have to immediately address that.
Yeah.
That it's okay. Like, it's okay to be hungry for a while. That's a normal human feeling. You don't have to immediately retch away from that feeling or immediately address that feeling. It's okay to be hungry. And even that, Nick, for me, is like a hard thing for me to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's your body's way of trying to tell you that you need food, but it's also, it's not always completely accurate. Right. So that's something you just kind of have to work through. But I want to bring up another point here too, in that when we're talking about emotional eating, we should probably define what that means, because I started looking into some of this a little bit and reading a little bit more about it, and it gets a little confusing when you don't have a clear definition of it, because okay, so I go to a wedding, somebody who I really care about, a close friend of mine is getting married. I'm happy for them. I'm celebrating. I'm eating cake. Am I emotionally eating?
Right.
Well, no. I mean,
situationally
in a way,
eating.
yes, but it's not, you know, so really what we're kind of talking about is we're talking about eating as a way to soothe an emotion, an uncomfortable emotion. Yeah, so it's a coping skill.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I teach a lot in my groups when we're talking about addiction is this thing called the mental behavioral impaired control cycle. And essentially what it is it's based off of operant conditioning, you know, which is that idea that if a behavior gets reinforced, it's more likely to occur. If a behavior gets punished, it's less likely to occur. And part of the reward can be negative things going away. So the removal of a negative feeling. So if I, let's say, am dealing with guilt and shame, and I use a substance or introduce some kind of foreign substance into my body that gives me that artificial boost, that rush of dopamine, something like that, essentially what happens is I get that temporary relief. So I feel good. So it's the removal of that negative feeling, and that reinforces the behavior. So what I have learned is I have learned that this behavior helps me feel better. But then it kind of becomes a cycle, right? Because this negative thing, this negative emotion that I'm trying to escape from, I try to solve with eating. And then as a result, usually when we're going to eat, we don't eat healthy foods, right? We eat some really crappy food and we feel terrible. So we kind of get bogged down. And then so our coping skill provides us immediate relief, but actually in the long run, we feel worse. And then when that happens and we start feeling worse, then what do? Well, we turn to the thing we know, which is eating. So it's kind of a cyclical thing that continues to happen. It's a cycle that we just get stuck in.
Yeah, and another thing I think that's interesting is this. So yes, I think that the emotional eating cycle is there. I think another thing that we don't